Hello and welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, March 27th through Sunday, April 2nd, 2023. This week we actually have a major first quarter moon. It's happening at 8 degrees Cancer. The reason why I say this is a particularly major first quarter moon is because in my personal, professional astrological opinion and in my experience, the Cancer first quarter moon is always volatile. It's always one of the most volatile days of the year. This happens once per year, always in spring, of course, when the sun is in Aries. And the reason why this is so chaotic and tumultuous is because the first quarter moon in Cancer squares the sun in Aries. The first quarter moon is always, in my opinion, the most volatile part of the cycle. This isn't a totally bad thing. This is also the best time for initiation. Some people will say it's the new moon or the full moon. It's really the first quarter moon that's all about initiation. So this does come with some great energies for creativity and initiation. But with the with the quarter moon in Cancer, it's in domicile. So it's a lot of that really strong energy that we associate with the water element in astrology. So a lot of heavy emotion and creativity, intuition, but that is juxtapositioned. It's in stark contrast to what the sun in Aries is representing, which is all about initiation. Let's just do stuff. Let's not think too much about anything or have any, sentimental feelings. Let's just have a lot of action. It's all about initiation this time of year. And the sun is exalted in Aries. So moon in domicile in Cancer, sun exalted in Aries. Both of these energies are very strong, very powerful, but they are at odds with one another. So hence the chaos. We're going to talk more about that and how it fits in with the week when we get to that day. Other than that, though, this week, you can see from the chart that almost all the planets are lined up in Taurus and Aries. You could also include Pisces, maybe, if you want to include Neptune and Saturn in this huge lineup that we have here. But for the most part, a lot of energy focused on Aries and Taurus. For those of you who have a lot of placements in those signs, it's all about you right now. Your life is likely changing in some pretty dramatic ways. But for the rest of us as well, this is generally a time of initiation. These are the first two signs of the zodiac. They are the youngest signs, I guess. And I've always wondered, if they're the first signs, wouldn't they be the oldest, not the youngest? But I guess that's just how it works in astrology. These signs represent very youthful energies, very optimistic energies, and they both correlate to beginnings. Aries is really about the initial spark, that making the first move, and Taurus is more about substantiating things. Let's have a little bit of foresight. Let's think about the long term when we're initiating as well. So really, although it can be chaotic combining these two very different energies, it can also be extremely useful if they are balanced together, because you will have the energy not only to initiate something in a very powerful way from Aries energy, but also to initiate something that is wise and sustainable and something that's going to last for a long time from the Taurus energies as well. Excuse me. Okay, so yeah, a lot of energy in Aries and Taurus. And I just want to mention too, a lot has recently changed just within the last week. All these energies are in Aries now. We had Sun, Moon, and Mercury all enter Aries just last week. So we're newly immersing ourselves into this, very fiery, outgoing, initiative kind of energy. Pluto's also recently in Aquarius too. So we're still kind of feeling the aftershocks of a lot of this kind of new beginning energy that we just had starting last week. Other than that, the moon will be transiting from Gemini to Virgo this week. So it's still on a corner that it does fairly well at. Moon is in Joy in Gemini. It's in domicile in Cancer, like we talked about. That will be kind of volatile, though. And then moon does pretty well in Leo as well. And I think moon in Virgo is underrated too, but that's just going to be for the very end of the week, really. Okay, so let's get into the forecast here. So we start out Monday, March 27th with moon in Gemini. Honestly, this looks like one of the most kind of chill, low-key days of the week, because moon in Gemini, like I talked about in the last forecast, moon is in Joy in Gemini. This is a fun placement. We can still have the intuition and the attention to detail, the nuance that often comes with a strong moon, but we can have all those things without having to deal with the heavy emotion that typically comes with a strong moon. Moon is in Gemini, which is still kind of detached. It's showing that the collective energy is just kind of curious. We want to have fun. We want to play around. We're still definitely very curious, very optimistic. We're in this new phase, with it being spring and all like that. So Moon in Gemini, I think, is really perfect. It kind of allows us to be a little bit more open. If we just had all these planets in Aries and Taurus, it would be really excellent for a new beginning, but it might be a little bit serious or intense. So Moon in Gemini is there to kind of just lighten things up a bit, bring some well-rounded energy to the picture. And yeah, like I said, Moon in Gemini, it's kind of nicely aspected. It's coming off of a sextile that it just made with the sun. So we're still experiencing some kind of harmonious, kind of just easy, carefree energy for the moment. So just kind of enjoy that while it lasts. I didn't mean for that to be so ominous, but that's kind of how it is, though. Okay, next, going into Tuesday, March 28th, Moon switches from Gemini to Cancer, and right away, this is a huge shift. Not only because it's always a huge shift when a planet goes from one sign to another, but in particular, now Moon is already very close to the first quarter square aspect that it will make with the Sun. And I wanted to mention too, something that will make things even more intense is the position of Mars. You can see Mars is at 1 degree Cancer here. So as soon as Moon enters Cancer, it basically crosses over Mars. And with the Sun in Aries and Mercury and Jupiter and Chiron in Aries as well, we already have a lot of that kind of Martian Aries energy since Mars rules Aries. In other words, lots of fiery energy, very intense. We may be more competitive, more active, more energetic. Moon crossing over Mars just kind of exacerbates all this. It shows that our emotional state is experiencing these things as well. Plus, we're already with an orb, even noon Eastern Standard Time, we're already with an orb of the first quarter Moon aspect. And then in the latter half of the day, Eastern Standard Time, we will get that exact first quarter Moon at 8 degrees Cancer. It looks like very late in the kind of late evening Eastern Standard Time. Okay, so what all that boils down to is a lot of intensity. We may be very frustrated. On the one hand, things may be changing too fast for us. It could be very stressful or anxious. But on the other hand, we may be very frustrated that what we want, we're not getting right away too. It can kind of work both ways. But either way, there's a lot of things happening very quickly, things changing in very dramatic ways. Like I talked about in the intro, Moon in Cancer, Sun in Aries, both of these energies are very strong, very potent. They're very ripe for creativity, for starting something new. But they just work in such different ways. They are out of sync with one another. They are fighting for different things. Sun in Aries is very masculine. It's very outgoing, very fiery. Moon in Cancer is very watery. It's more feminine, more emotional, more introverted or inward focused. Sun in Aries is more outward focused. So examining these things separately, Sun in Aries is all about going outward. Let's start something new. Let's do something physically. Let's take action. Moon in Cancer on its own would be supporting us in, slowing down. Let's kind of rest, relax. Let's pull it in. Let's be more considerate, more careful with how we spend our energy or our time. So it's when you combine both of these energies together, and when they make that exact aspect, that conversation with one another, that you really see the shit hit the fan, so to speak. Everything is up in the air. It's extremely chaotic. This is something I look to this particular first quarter Moon every year. The difference this year is that, Mars is very close, like I talked about too. So this is going to really ramp things up too. It's not all bad, like I talked about in the intro too. If you want to start something new, or if you've been stuck in a rut, sometimes we get kind of complacent, or we know something's wrong but we don't know what to do about it. We're kind of just stuck. This might be exactly what you need to get you out of it. This will shake you out, and either it will inspire you to do something new, to take some kind of action, or that action will come from your external environment. I would look to both directions here. Some energies are more about the change happening within us. Sometimes it's more about our environment. This looks more external, but it could be internal too. It's really all over the place. This newness happening, new action, new creativity, new instigating energy. So This could be exactly what you need. It just depends on the situation. If you don't want any change approaching this date, then that's where I see this kind of as an alert, like, be ready for this. You have to be a little bit adaptable or ready for something new on this day. But again, on the other hand, if you've been stuck, if you've been wanting to do something new or wanting some kind of new energy, I couldn't imagine something more perfect, because this is disruptive in nature. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. If anything more comes to me, I'll let you know, but that's really the main, this isn't complicated. I don't think it is complex, maybe, or it's very chaotic. It's very tumultuous, but these energies are very primal in nature. Sun and moon are kind of the most, primal energies that we have. And when they're in such strong signs to them, they're acting in ways that are very typical of their nature. Sun in Aries, the masculine energy is very strong. It's very masculine. It is, what we know it to be. The way it typically operates is how it's operating. Same with the feminine energy, the emotional energy. Both of these things they're not really nuanced. They're not confusing. They're at least easy to understand. It's just the combination of both of those that may create some situations that are complicated, or it's just when so much happens so quickly that things become complicated. But the energies themselves, I would argue, are not complicated in this dynamic, if that makes sense. We do have one aspect, though, which in my opinion is very much overshadowed by this first quarter moon, but it's still worth talking about for sure. So Mercury will cross over Jupiter at 18 degrees Aries. If anything, I think this just further exacerbates what's already been kind of set up to occur. Mercury, of course, represents the information, the intellectual energy, how we communicate. And as it crosses over Jupiter in Aries, that's showing that we're really speaking off the cuff. We're thinking quickly, speaking in ways that are very blunt. Also, the information that comes to us may be very blunt. It may be kind of philosophical and broad in nature, since Jupiter is involved. But these things are happening very quickly. They're very straightforward, very blunt. That is the manner of Aries. Does that make sense? Or a different way to put it too is Mercury, if that's kind of the way we do things, the way we communicate, the way we obtain information, Jupiter kind of blows things up. It expands things. It energizes things. The planet Jupiter literally disperses more heat than it takes in. It heats things up. Aries does the same thing as well. Aries is all about heating things up. So basically, we may have some heated words today. We may speak, and things could get very confrontational or offensive. But on the other hand, you may, some kind of blunt communication may be necessary for getting information across very quickly, or or coming across some very potent information, some very black and white information. Information may travel very quickly today, but I would speculate that it will not be difficult to understand, in the sense that, with Aries and even Cancer to some extent, but especially Aries, things tend to be black and white. It's the first sign, so it's not a convoluted energy at all. So with Mercury conjunct Jupiter there, and with the Sun there, things are happening in a way that is, in a sense, simple. Again, the only complicated part of it is that there's just so much happening so quickly that it may take us time to catch up. Okay, going right along to Wednesday, March 29th, Moon continues through Cancer, and so I would say that, we're still definitely experiencing that first quarter moon. It's not as intense or potent as it was Tuesday, March 28th, especially because Moon is also separated from Mars now too. Moon is definitely not within orb of a conjunction to Mars. It's still coming off of that first quarter moon aspect that it just made the day before, though. So we still may be kind of dealing with those aftershocks, dealing with some intensity, still definitely in the midst of, that window where if you need to initiate something, it's still a great time. We're still in the midst of that kind of energy. Everything's about, taking action, newness, Again, not maybe as extreme as it was a day before, but definitely still a lot of those same themes are able to be explored here. Moon will square Jupiter and Chiron, or I should say first Chiron, then Jupiter today. So I thought that was interesting. Moon is no longer technically squaring the sun, but it's still squaring these other Aries bodies as well. And I always say with Chiron in Aries, it really stirs the pot. It really gets people triggered and very sensitive, very vocal. So with the moon squaring Chiron, and then pretty much immediately after that, later in the day, it squares Jupiter. That's still adding, kind of stirring the pot, adding some heat, some fire. Again, the main downside is that this is chaotic. But the main plus side is that, this is a time for newness, for evolution, for starting things. Okay, let's go forward here. So Thursday, March 30th, later in the day, evening Eastern Standard Time, Moon will leave Cancer and enter Leo. And I think I almost feel this energy like it's like a sigh of relief. We can kind of, wind down a little bit. It's great to make the most of these phases that are active and, if we want to start something new and all that. But I think generally we want to kind of rest and relax. We want to play, everything in general around this kind of general time, for years now and for years to come, it's been so intense. So I think in general, we like these phases that are easier, that are, not as intense. So I think, that's what will happen with Moon entering Leo. Now it will come within, kind of within range of a trine to the sun. We're definitely not going to have that on Thursday, but, we're kind of turning a corner and getting to a much more harmonious energy, much more stable energy with Moon in Leo, beginning to hint at some trines, especially a trine with the sun. Okay. So, Moon in Leo, it's just an energy that blends much more readily with the sun in Aries. I think Moon does pretty well in Leo too. If Moon represents our emotional state, our kind of communal emotional state, in Leo, it's fixed fire, so it's very stable. It's very energetic and fiery, but in a stable way. Leo is almost kind of like a counterpart to Cancer in a way, I think. A more outgoing, kind of masculine counterpart of Cancer. Leo, like Cancer, still rules kind of like the heart, I think. I don't know if that's technically true, but I would say that that's true. Both Cancer and Leo are very heartfelt. They both deal with themes surrounding family and creation, things like that. So basically, Moon in Leo, I really, I don't want to say I like it better, but I just think it's an energy that we'll embrace more readily. We can kind of relax a little bit and have more fun, or just kind of chill out a little bit more, for lack of a better word. Other than that, we do have a couple aspects today. So Venus will cross over Uranus at 16 degrees Taurus. You can see here, looks like, if you want to get really technical, it'll be the latter half of the day, Eastern Standard Time. And this is interesting, to say the least, because it's definitely a clash of different themes going on here. Venus is it's in domicile in Taurus. So this means that the desire, the pleasure, the attraction is very straightforward right now. And it's mostly centered on the physical. So we're wanting to indulge in physical pleasures, good food, comfortable clothes, a relaxing walk on the beach, or walk through nature, through the forest or something like that. Any of these things that kind of tantalize the senses, that's what we want when Venus is in Taurus. Also, in terms of our finances and our emotional relationships, of course, to see how these things are for you personally, you have to see how this falls in your own chart. But for all of us in general, Venus in Taurus shows that we are excuse me, we're very able to support ourselves in a kind of simple and ready type of way. We're readily able to support ourselves. Communication in interpersonal relationships is straightforward. It's gentle, but also straightforward, if that makes sense. And finances are simple. Venus and Taurus, it's a stable energy. Okay. But now we're combining that with Uranus, which is, in its very nature, it's not stable. And Uranus experiences Taurus much differently. Uranus is in fall in Taurus. So unlike Venus, which is, acting like her normal self, acting in a way that's very easy for us to experience and very easy for us to understand, Uranus in Taurus is anything but. Not only is it typically eccentric and unpredictable, but it's in Taurus, it's in its sign of fall. So this is a particularly unpredictable and, difficult to understand transit for Uranus. So what happens when we combine both of these? Venus crossing over Uranus. This means that, much of the desire, the attraction, it's still focused on those physical pleasures. And although it would typically be stable, now that it crosses over Uranus, this shows that we are rethinking and redefining what we are attracted to and how we seek what we are attracted to. And again, this especially applies to things that are physical in nature. So physical desires, physical pleasures, also income. Taurus has everything to do with how we support ourselves. So much of that is financial. Much of it is emotional as well, of course. But in Taurus, much of it is physical. Much of it is, financial. How do I, support my basic needs, basically? So in all of these things, you may get some kind of new vision, some kind of new inspiration, some kind of new way of understanding things. This will be especially true if you have any planets around 16 degrees of the fixed signs, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, or especially Taurus, of course, since this is where that's where this is happening. If you have any planets around those placements, this will affect you personally in a very dramatic way. But for all of us in general as well, be open to some kind of new change. Often with Uranus, the change can happen from your external world, some kind of change that's happening that you need to adjust to. But more often than not, with Uranus aspects like this, the change comes from within us. The change is not actually in the situation that we are looking at. The change is how we are looking at the situation, if that makes sense. So a lot of people say, they dread Uranus aspects and transits. They can shake things up, so it can be difficult to adjust to the changes that come from those shifts in perception. But it can be rewarding as well. I always say that with those changes in consciousness and shifts in perception that come from Uranus transits like this, I argue that it is an increase in responsibility, because with that increase of consciousness or awareness comes an increase in responsibility, because if you're looking at a situation a different way, from that comes the potential need for improvement or the need to make a decision. Do we need to do something else, based on this new awareness? So that's where I think it can be difficult for some people. It depends on your own astrology and how this fits in with, what you are representing, I guess. Okay. And then one more aspect. I'm not going to go into this as deeply, but, definitely need to mention Mars trining Saturn as well. Mars trine Saturn is typically very useful, I would say. Mars is our ambition. It's how we take action in the moment. And Saturn is all about, it's also about ambition and taking action, but in a much more long-term way. How can we take action in a way that's going to be sustainable and rewarding, in the end game? So combining both of those is very useful for strategy, for ambition, for setting goals, things like that. With this particular aspect, Mars is in Cancer, Saturn is in Pisces. These are both water signs, which is kind of interesting. These are unusual signs for these planets to be in. Mars is actually in fall in Cancer, so it's a little bit weak or debilitated. But this is showing that this is a great time for setting goals or planning, but it's going to be about things that are essentially non-physical in nature. So spiritual kind of goals, or goals having to do with emotions, which of course those are transient, so it may be difficult to set those kind of goals. That's why these planets are kind of so out of place here. But it could be a time for doing these types of things, although it may come across as strange or maybe not it may be not so intuitive to to think in this kind of way. I do think it can be advantageous to make these kind of goals, or to strategize with your long-term, emotional health, spirituality, things like that. Okay, and then before I move on, to combine both of those aspects as well. Although they don't aspect one another, it's not part of one larger aspect, but they are occurring at the same time. So not only is it a great time to set goals for the long term regarding our emotional and spiritual health or status, it's also a time for redefining and rethinking how we support ourselves and how we go after what we desire to. So I don't know, maybe just think about how those combine together, I guess. And if you really want to do the homework and see how this affects you personally, I know I say this a million times, but where do these things fall in your chart? Where does 16 degrees Taurus fall in your chart? Because that's where the Venus-Uranus conjunction is. And then where do 2 degrees Cancer and or Pisces fall in your chart? Because that's where Mars and Saturn are trining one another. All right, Friday, March 31st. Moon is continuing to cruise through this first half of Leo, and it will actually make the exact trine to the sun. So sun at 10 degrees Aries, moon at 10 degrees Leo. This is great. This is, I I always kind of rant and rave about moon trining the sun, because it's, I think more than any other aspect, it's the best shot at everyone having a good day, those good vibes, good energies, generally speaking. It's just very strong, very stable. Especially with the moon in Leo, it shows that our emotional status, at least communally, is not only positive, warm, optimistic, energetic, but it's all those things in a stable way. So that can be very powerful, and more than powerful, it can just be enjoyable and pleasurable in the moment. We're still focusing on how we feel in the moment, just like when moon was in Cancer, but in a way that is a little bit more upbeat and more outgoing and more physical in nature as well, I would say. So with all that aligning with this trine to sun in Aries, this is a great time for starting something new, not in as intense of a way as when moon was in Cancer in the first part of the week. That was more, I don't know, more about really starting something in a kind of an intense way. This is more just like, I don't know, like starting conversations throughout the day, or starting, some plans just to, I think it's much more focused on fun and focused on spontaneity more so, than the last few days, Tuesday and Wednesday, you know what I mean? So yeah, and also a lot of fire energy too. We still do have Venus and Uranus and North Node in Taurus, but really the focus is mostly on these fire signs, Mercury, Jupiter, Chiron, Sun in Aries. So we still have an Aries stellium, and then now this beautiful trine from moon and Leo to the sun. So very fiery, very warm energies today for sure. All right, for Saturday, April 1st, moon is still continuing through Leo. We don't have that exact trine aspect, but moon is still trining the sun, at least by sign. And we're still sort of within orb of the trine. So still kind of like riding that high, having those, warm, harmonious energies continuing on today as well. So I really love that. I love how this energy fits into Friday and Saturday. If that fits in your schedule, this would be a good day for just having fun, going out, doing something. I would definitely recommend that for this, for especially the start of this weekend, because Aries, almost all the focus is on Aries, Taurus, and Leo, in my opinion, more so than anywhere else. And all three of these signs really love, going out, having fun, indulging, having a good time with others. So yeah, if you were on the fence about, should I stay in or go out, I would say go out today for sure. Don't let the start of this week scare you into not enjoying your weekend, because it looks like it's going to be a lot more stable, a lot more fun, as we get into Friday and Saturday for sure. Otherwise for Saturday, that's pretty much it. Moon will make some exact trines to Jupiter, and it'll be within orb of a trine to Mercury by the end of the day as well. So now, we're really kind of, I think something major changed at the start of the week, and then by the time we get to the end of the week, things have developed so quickly that we're already getting to a much more stable place. I think many of us, by the end of the week. Getting into a place where we can not only not only adapt to the changes, but really kind of thrive. This looks like a lot of really fun energy. Aries, Taurus, and Leo, these are all really confident energies, so we can be very assured of ourselves, very sure of ourselves, very assertive. I'm kind of mixing my words here, but yeah, great energies for having fun, having a party, going out. Moon trining Jupiter, and then coming close to this trine with Mercury. This is really great energy for communicating in a way that's effortlessly effective, very straightforward, but also kind of fun as well. We're able to be kind of blunt and transparent right now. So I won't continue on, but yeah, really, really great stuff, I think, for everyone, generally speaking. Okay, Sunday, April 2nd. You can see just before noon Eastern Standard Time, Moon will leave Leo and enter Virgo. So, of course, this is a huge change. I think this is a little bit disappointing. Honestly, I think it's disappointing, again, communally, like wholly for everyone, holistically. It is a little bit of a disappointment when planets switch from Leo to Virgo, just because, Leo is such a fun energy. It's all about just enjoying the moment, being spontaneous, just living your truth, as they say, just being who you are and focusing on that. And when planets shift into Virgo, you have to be a little bit more serious, and let's plan things, let's organize, let's be a little bit more like analytical and skeptical maybe. So I do think this is one of the most disappointing switches between planets, between signs. But the way this is aspected, it's nothing too dark or turbulent at all. Moon is no longer trining these Aries planets, but now that Moon is in Virgo, it will start to trine these Taurus planets. And Moon is in the first half of the day is when Moon technically trines Mercury before it enters Virgo as well. So that's where you get the really effective communication, and especially being able to communicate about things that are deep in nature, like emotions or deep concepts. All of that would reach kind of like peak efficacy in the first half of the day on Sunday, but that would continue throughout the day as well. Let's see here, what else? Moon entering Virgo. I really think the moon actually thrives in Virgo. I know I did say it can be a bit of a disappointment, especially for those of us that are more accustomed to Leo type energy, like if you have a lot of fire in your chart. But Moon in Virgo, I think is underrated. Moon wants to, it's our emotional part of ourselves. So it's wanting stability. It's wanting to kind of slow down, wind down, and, find things that are stable and safe. And with Moon in Virgo, we're wanting to organize. We're wanting to take stock, take inventory, measure things, and make sure that everything is accounted for, and that, we can kind of plan into the near future. Not so much the very distant future. That would be more like Capricorn or Aquarius or something. But with Moon in Virgo, we're wanting to just make sure the present is taken care of, and the near future, tie up any loose ends. This is very different from these Aries and Taurus energies, which are all about initiation and living in the moment. So really, this could be a nice balance. Definitely still part of this initiating phase, but also, let's make sure this is sustainable as well. Let's kind of get organized too at the same time. So I think this is actually kind of peaceful, especially for a Sunday. It's very fitting for a Sunday. This energy would be more kind of, you could still go out, you could still be active. There is still a lot going on in Aries and then Taurus. But with Moon in Virgo, it is a little bit slower than, a slower pace than Friday or Saturday was. So if anything, I'd say go out Friday and or Saturday, and then Sunday looks more like a typical Sunday. Just kind of take it easy, rest. If anything, maybe just work on something at home or prepare for your week that's coming up here. Okay, that's what I have for you this week. So speaking of next week, there is a full moon in Libra, and we're almost in eclipse season, which is a really big deal. I actually, at first glance, I thought that this Libra full moon was going to be at least a partial eclipse, because it is getting close to the south node. It's going to be less than half a sign away, or less than 15 degrees away from the south node, I believe. So I had to do a double take and just make sure. It won't be an eclipse next week, but like I said, we're getting closer there. We will get an actual total solar eclipse on April 20th that will be visible near Australia. So basically what that means is major changes that are coming. I know we've already had a lot of major changes, but every eclipse season, without fail, that's the time where everything kind of goes down, where it feels surreal. So yeah, I definitely look forward to bringing a lot more new interesting information to you. Okay, but yeah, that's what I have for you this week. So thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you guys next week.